George Santos, to many of you, was probably introduced by Glenn Greenwald. Do you want to just pop up Glenn's tweet?
He's just trying to educate everybody.
And it's just, I missed this when it first went up. I usually don't take my cues, but here's Glenn Greenwald. Meet George Santos, the first ever Brazilian American and first ever openly gay Republican elected to Congress in U.S. history. He's the son of a working class immigrant parents who left Brazil for the U.S. Congressman-Elect Santos was born and raised in Jackson Heights, Queens. Now in New York 3rd.
And he's going to be driving liberals absolutely crazy for a very long time to come.
Significant identity points there for a guy who, if you looked at his website, prominently called himself an anti-socialist.
Yeah, I mean, well, now you wonder, like, why Glenn was promoting this guy. It could have been, at best, just because, Glenn likes to troll, and that's fine. We all do that. In fact, I congratulated him for introducing us to him. So, we all like a good troll. But the problem is, it turns out that almost nothing in which, in Glenn's introduction, and I say this with surprise because Glenn is...
He has journalist in the bio.
He's a journalist.
Yeah.
I mean, it was someone like me who introduced. I wouldn't be able to hold to the same standard because I'm just a human container.
YouTuber.
But by his account, this is from the New York Times. Libs at the New York Times. New York City, he catapulted himself from a New York City public college to become a seasoned Wall Street financier and investor. The family-owned real estate portfolio of 13 properties and an animal rescue charity that saved more than 2,500 dogs and cats. Maybe that's why, because I know that Glenn also is involved in rescue attempts for dogs. But a New York Times review of public documents and court filings from the United States and Brazil, as well as various attempts to verify claims that Mr. Santos, 34, made on the campaign trail, calls into question key parts of the resume he sold to voters. Citigroup and Goldman Sachs, the marquee Wall Street firms on Mr. Santos's campaign biography, told the Times they have no record of his ever working there. Well, in my book, that's a positive, but...
But maybe the saying you work there and then not having worked there, that might be the red flag.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
Officials at Baruch College, which Mr. Santos said he graduated from in 2010, now that was 12 years ago. Sometimes you forget these things. Could find no record of anyone matching his name and date of birth graduating that year. That's weird. Maybe he changed his name, but you can't. You can't change his date of birth. That's weird. There was also little evidence that his animal rescue group, Friends of Pets United, was, as Mr. Santos claimed, a tax-exempt organization. The IRS could locate no record of a registered charity with that name.
Yeah, well, they're authoritarians.
That's right. Maybe they need to hire more people.
Yeah.
His financial disclosure form suggests a life of some wealth. He lent his campaign more than $700,000 during midterm election, has donated thousands of dollars to other candidates in the last 2 years, and reported a $750,000 salary and over $1 million in dividends from his company, the DeVolder organization. Yet, the DeVolder organization has no public website or LinkedIn page and is something of a mystery. On the campaign website, Mr. Santos once described DeVolder as his family's firm that managed $80 million in assets. On his congressional financial disclosure, he described it as a capital introduction consulting company. But Mr. Santos' disclosures did not reveal any clients. An omission 3 election experts said could be problematic if such clients exist. There's no records of his properties in his family fortune of real estate. Someone else I know checked his financial disclosure forms, and apparently, this is odd. In 2020, he claimed no assets over $5,000.
Wow.
Relatable.
In other words, he could have had a bunch of assets like at $4,500, but $5,000 is the threshold. In 2022, his financial disclosures show as much as $11 million in assets.
Whoa.
Good year.
Including a bank account between $1 and $5 million.
He hustled.
He also says in 2022, he had no income.
Yeah.
That's when he was...
So in other words, to be clear, no cash, no money in 2020, no income in 2022, 2021, great year for him.
Yeah.
That's when he was a beta, and now he's a sigma.
Well, let nobody tell you that hard work doesn't pay off.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things that are a little bit weird about Santos. He said he was born in Queens. That's what we were told by the journalist. And emigrated to Brazil, raised in the borough. His father, he has said, is Catholic and has roots in Angola. His mother, Fatima de Volder, maybe that's where the de Volder organization came from, was descended from migrants who fled Jewish persecution in Ukraine in World War II, strife Belgium. Santos has described himself as a non-observant Jew, but has also said he is Catholic. You can be both if your parents are both. Records show that Mr. Santos' mother, who died in 2016, lived for a time in the Brazilian city of Niterói, the Rio suburb, where she was employed as a nurse. Maybe that can be a lucrative business. Maybe she had family money. After Mr. Santos obtained a high school equivalency diploma, he apparently also spent some time there. In 2008, when Mr. Santos was 19, he stole the checkbook of a man his mother was caring for. That's according to a Brazilian court.
Rise and grind, baby.
Police and court records show that Santos used the checkbook to make fraudulent purchases, including a pair of shoes. 2 years later, Santos confessed to the crime, was later charged. Santos, I guess, has been avoiding returning to Brazil because of those charges. That period in Brazil overlapped when Santos said he was attending the Baruch College, where he claims he was awarded a bachelor's degree in economics and finance. But again, Baruch has no knowledge of Santos, using multiple variations of his first, middle, and last names. He also claims that he did a stint at New York University. That claim on his campaign site, not repeated anywhere else. And NYU, of course, could find no attendance records.
He also said he did that without any debt.
Santos claims after college he worked for Citigroup. They also have no...
It's funny to lie about these things that like kind of seem like vulnerabilities, except it's a Republican,
yes,
but like,
right.
It's like, oh, I guess no one's going to lie about I'm a banker.
And he probably was just a little bit shocked that he went through the entire election process and this came out afterwards.
Gosh, nobody found it.
He also said in an interview on WNYC that his company, which he did not identify, although in other places he's called the Overland or whatever it was, lost 4 employees at the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando in June 2016, but a Times review of the news coverage and obituaries found that none of the 49 victims appear to have worked at the various firms named in his biography.
Classy.
He also claimed to found Friends of Pets United. He ran for 5 years starting in 2013. That's supposedly evidence of his philanthropic work. IRS, again, was not able to find any records showing that the group held any tax-exempt status. New York and New Jersey could not find any records of it being registered as a charity. They did one fundraiser, at least, with the New Jersey Animal Rescue Group in 2017, charging $50 for entry. The event's beneficiary never received any of the funds. Said Mr. Santos offered many excuses for not forwarding the money. Now, look, I will tell you that when Air America launched, I got to be careful here because I don't want to, litigation. It was launched by a guy who other people told me I wouldn't trust him to wash my bathroom with a toothbrush. and I think at one point was allegedly embezzled some money from the boys club. But there was a lot of like, I'll get it there. Or I've got, you're going to get it. I know we bounced a
Wire
check.
transfer.
I know we bounced a check, but,
Check your wire.
Yeah, they have that in common, honestly. Anna Delvey should campaign for him next time around.
Santos, in November of 2015, apparently owed $2,500 in unpaid rent. This is, of course, before he came into his funds in 2021.
Once he manifested.
Yeah, in 2017, he had another eviction case. The irony is, of course, because that would have resonated well, I would think. But in 2021, Santos was becoming vocal on housing issues, but not from a tenant perspective.
No.
He said during the New York's pandemic era eviction moratorium, Santos said on Twitter that he was a landlord affected by the freeze. Will we landlords ever be able to take back possession of our property?
Oh my God. Yeah. Hey, but he is the first ever Brazilian American and first ever openly gay Republican.
It goes on. There's something really weird about this, and watch this space, because there's some really weird ass stuff going on with this dude.
Can we check out his statement through his lawyer?
Oh, let's look at the statement. Yeah. Now, to be clear, Santos put out a statement, and this is a fun exercise. I'm going to read the statement, and you listen to hear and this is an extensive New York Times article.
Yeah.
This is not, I only went through like a half of it. They seem to have been very, very rigorous and thorough. I'm going to read this statement, and you tell me when you hear a single iota of denial of anything that's there. This is what is known as a non-denial denial. Statement from George Santos' attorney. Okay, just right there, I should tell you. When the attorney comes in to make statements in response to these things, you should just know that as a candidate, now a congressman-elect, you have at least one more bite at the apple, because you can say this lawyer was wrong. So that's a little lesson for you. If you ever get, you ever have a non-denial denial to issue, don't issue it yourself.
The lawyer take the flag.
You get a degree of separation.
Exactly. Get an agent of some sort. Statement from George Santos' attorney, Joseph Murray Esquire. I wonder if even that guy exists. Did anybody actually look up and see if there is a Joseph Murray Esquire?
It says here he runs an animal charity.
Honestly, I would Google Joseph Murray Esquire. I wonder if there's even a lawyer. That sounds like, I feel like I've done that in the past. Like, Bill Stevens Esquire.
It's what was Trump's fake spokesman? John
Miller.
John Miller Esquire.
Oh, actually, what's funny is if this is the guy I'm thinking of, he ran for Queens County District Attorney.
Joseph Murray did.
Yes, when I was working at the borough president's office, and the current borough president, now DA, was running against him. So I know this guy.
Interesting.
Well, it's good that he exists. George Santos represents the kind of progress that the left is so threatened by. A gay, Latino, first-generation American, and Republican who won a Biden district.
Is this just Glenn Greenwald?
I was about to say, I'm looking at Glenn's tweet now. Let's just keep this up there, and then I'll read Glenn's and see how different it is. Meet George Santos, the first ever Brazilian American and first ever openly gay Republican elected to Congress in U.S. history. The son of working-class immigrant parents who left Brazil for the U.S., Congressman-Elect Santos was born and raised in Jackson Heights, Queens.
Okay, so close. First-generation American and Republican who won the Biden district in overwhelming fashion by showing everyday voters that there is a better option than the broken promises and failed policies of the Democratic Party.
What other kind of voters are there?
After 4 years in the public eye and on the verge of being sworn in as a member of the Republican-led 118th Congress, the New York Times launches this shotgun blast of attacks. I mean, I don't think it's the New York Times' fault that there's so much ammunition that...
A shotgun as opposed to a 22.
Yeah, exactly. It is no surprise that Congressman-Elect Santos has enemies at the New York Times who are attempting to smear his good name with these defamatory allegations. You know, I don't think that they would qualify as actually defamatory in the sense, a legal sense, because he's a public figure, unless the Times knew they were wrong about these. As Winston Churchill famously stated, you have enemies? Good. It means that you stood up for something sometime in your life. End quote. Wow. Now, let's just start from the end, and this is assigned Joseph Murray Esquire. We've established that Joseph Murray Esquire is a real person. The quote, as Winston Churchill famously stated, well, first off, I don't think it's famously stated, right? That Winston Churchill said this. Is it really that famous? You have enemies, good. It means you stood up for something sometime in your life.
Let me check that out.
If he's taking,
I just don't think it's that famous.
Yeah, but if he's taking cues from Greenwald, he has to include some sort of like adverb in there.
But let's take another step back into the Winston Churchill.
So, per the New York Times following up on this statement, they said at the end of this piece of them following up, according to the fact-checking website PolitiFact, the words probably were not said by Churchill. Yeah. PolitiFact instead attributed the original sentiment to the French writer Victor Hugo.
There you go.
So, a misattribution in the state.
That's okay. I mean, that's all right. I mean, that's, Churchill, Hugo. What? Was there a single denial of any of the things that the Times found?
No, but there was a masthead, so it looks very official.
Yeah, there you go.
Just haters. The haters are hating.
There you go.
Just says Joseph Murray Esquire.
Honestly, if you have to get ahead in life, right, you have to just take all the shots that the betas are unwilling to take, right? Yeah. And that means lying about every element of your resume.
Failure of the Democratic Party in New York State. Apparently there was some Oppo research done, but frankly, they didn't weaponize it in the way they could. Failure of having local media coverage of races. Failure on both counts there.
Yeah, and also the Dem candidate who ran as like, I'm not a crazy, defund the police, or I'm a sensible, moderate Democrat, and that's how you lose.
Yeah, and there were good leftists.
I'm just a competent.
Melanie
Dorigo
was in that primary who we had on the show. Lost her primary. Was a good progressive.
Yeah, big thanks to Tom Suozzi for running for governor for no reason and losing this seat.
Oh yeah.
Big thanks to New York Democratic Party Chair Jay Jacobs for focusing more on helping Hakeem Jeffries bash the left in New York City and around, and make it so that Kathy Hochul underperformed Joe Biden in the state of New York for this guy to win and be a complete fabulist. And we had and there was no opposition research that was levied at him before he is going to be sworn in as a member of Congress in January.
Yeah.
Especially now that he's committed to supporting Kevin McCarthy for Speaker, which he hadn't before these allegations came out. So he's now probably guaranteed to get the seat because Democrats aren't going to do anything before he gets elected, and he's told McCarthy he's going to support him. So
there you go.
We should get Perrine or somebody on Hakeem Jeffries, set the tone about how bad that's going to be.
Maybe we'll have him on Friday. We got to figure out.
There was a good piece that I got to think about, but that someone had on Hakeem Jeffries. Yeah, no, it just, I mean, back to just the silly point at the beginning about, like, I just wonder where Glenn was tipped off about the New York 3 race.
It could also just be that he just, follows these things, and
he loves the opportunity to throw identity politics back at the left. It could be as simple as that.
It's just interesting, though. The right is very principled about hating identity politics and loving free speech.
Well,
just kidding. They aren't. In fact, whenever they're able to use identity politics to their benefit, they do. Whenever they're able to censor people for their benefit, we're seeing it now.
They resent it because it often harms them, but that's it.
Editone, a prominent New York Times reporter, took to Twitter to blame some people for not supporting local newspapers for the why Santos was not investigated enough. Maybe.
I mean, I would suggest maybe paying some of the op-ed writers smaller fees and investing more in reporters, but I don't know. Then maybe blaming the reading public.
Well, and then when they invested more in their reporters, they would like actually avoid things like a mass strike at the New York Times because they can't pay their workers so much. But
To everyone who asking, this is Michael Barbaro. Everyone asking why reporters didn't dig up the George Santos story before the election. A fair question. Ask yourself when you last paid for your local newspaper, like Newsday on Long Island, which covers it day in, day out. It's not.
But like, the New York Times is printed in Queens. Like, I know it's a global newspaper, but like, what else should the New York section of the New York Times be reporting on other than this?
But like, I mean, I think it's a true dynamic that local reporting is going out. But this is all because of, I mean, Silicon Valley's influence on publishing and particularly like Facebook and stuff.
It's not
like
because somebody's not paying a quarter for the paper. I mean,
right.
There's a lot of other structural factors that go in there. And if you really wanted to take that tack, you would be talking about, I mean, frankly, it's an easy way to do it. The government could easily, I think, under an antitrust authority, say to Facebook or to Twitter or to Instagram, you need to pay 0.5 cents every time somebody posts a link to a news article there. And then we take that, fund that, kick that back to local newspapers. We use it as a program to provide bridge loans to people starting this, or I mean, there's a whole host of ways you could do this, but
yeah, and it's a tough situation because you often have like the industry sort of publishing groups sort of organizing against big tech, but those groups don't necessarily, like, they're not led by like the paper unions, for instance. So they have their own sort of incentives and way that they would sort of get certain industry carve outs, and workers need to be more in control of all these places.
Yeah, I just don't like Michael Barbaro, and there's a tendency from some people in news media shaming regular people for not buying papers or not subscribing or not looking at things behind paywalls, when the reality of, like, I mean, at least with the Times, they're making record profits this year as well. And I know local news dying is a real thing, but it's not on the consumer. I know it's a bit finger waggy.